Hello friends, how are you? Welcome to the Japan Study Center. Today we are going to see the chapter of geography, and what is our topic today? Temperature and its a distribution. That is the most important topic here. The temperatures and its distribution. Temperature is indicated there is relative to degrees of the heat of a substance, and heat is there is energy which is a make to things or object is hot. Well, the temperature is a measuring there is a intensity of heat, and though there is a quite a distinct from to each other. Yet heat and the temperatures are closely related to the because gain or loss of the heat necessary to the rise of lower end temperature. Important here, you know that the gain and loss of the heat is necessary to the rise or lower to the temperature. The Celsius is a scale is named after the is a Swiss astronomer is Andreas Celsius. He is associated to the internationally by scientists for the reporting to air temperature. There is a most important here. The given of Celsius here, Andreas Celsius, is accepted to international by scientists. And the air temperature. The historical temperature record of the several English-speaking countries include the value on the Fahrenheit scale. The Fahrenheit temperature may be converted to there is a Celsius equivalent by the formula. The relation here, Fahrenheit and Celsius, there is Celsius is equal to 5 upon 9 is F minus 32. There is a most important relation here, the Celsius and Fahrenheit change. Moreover, different in temperature determine their direction of flow of the heat, and this we can understand by the studying of temperature distribution. Okay. The distribution of temperature is a varies both horizontal and vertically, and let us study it is under the horizontal distribution of temperature and the vertical distribution of temperature. The first I here the horizontal distribution of temperature. See that the horizontal distribution of temperature here, distribution of temperature across the latitude over of the surface of the earth is called horizontal distribution. On the map, the horizontal distribution of temperature is commonly shown by the isotherms. Line are connected to a point that is have equal temperature. On the isotherm is made by the two words iso and therm. Is iso mean the equal and term means is a temperature. If you study on the isothermal map, you will be find that the distribution of temperature is uneven. Uneven, there is the most important here. The important here the factor responsible for the uneven distribution of temperature as follow. There is the most important here. The factor responsible for the uneven distribution of temperature. The first here, latitude. Land and sea contract and relief and altitudes, ocean currents, wind, vegetation cover, nature of the soil and slope and the sap. There is the most important, I repeat again, the factor of temperature. There is a altitude, land and sea contract and relief and altitudes, ocean current, winds, vegetation cover, nature of the soil and slope and sap. There is a most important factor here. Note down your notebook. And here the brief account of the factor of temperature. The first here, latitude. You have already studied under to the insulations, that is the angle of incidence goes on a decreasing from a equator to about to the pole. Higher the angle of incidence, the higher is the temperature. There is important here. Higher the angle of incidence, the higher of the temperature, and lower angle of incidence lead to be a lower of temperature. It is because of this is that higher temperature are found in the tropical region, and they generally decrease at the considerable rate toward the pole. Temperature is below freezing point near the pole almost throughout the year. You know that is the most important point. The generally decrease of considerable rate toward the pole. Temperature is below the freezing point. Where? Near the pole of almost through the year. And next here, land and sea contrast. There is an important here point. Land and sea contrast affect the temperature to a great extent. The land gets heated more rapidly and to a great degrees than but as the water during to sunshine. It is also cooled down more rapidly than water is during night. Hence, the temperature is relatively highly on land during the daytime and it is the high in the water during night. You know that there is important here. The land is during daytime and the higher in the water during the night. The higher on the land during to daytime and the higher in the water during to night time. In the same way, there are the seasonal contrast in the temperature. During the summer, the air above land has a higher temperature than the ocean. During to summer, the air above the land and the higher temperature than to the ocean. But the air above the ocean get a higher temperature than the land masses in a winter. Notwithstanding their great contrast between land and the water surface, there are difference in the rate of the heating of different land surface. A snow is covering land as a in a polar area is warm. It's very slowly because of their large amount of the reflection of the solar energy. You know that the notwithstanding their greater contrast between the land and the water surface, there are different in the rate of the heating of different land surface. A snow covered land as in a polar area warm is very slowly because of the large amount of reflection of solar energy. A vegetation covered land does not be get exclusively is heated because a great amount of the insulation is used in evaporating water from the plant. Important here, a vegetation covered land does not be get exclusively is heated because a great amount of insulation is used in is evaporating water from the plants. The next here, third point, relief and altitude. There is important relief features such as the mountain, plateaus, and plain control the temperature by of the modified. It is a distribution. You know that the relief and the altitude. The mountain act as a barrier against the movement of wind. The mountain act a barrier. Okay, mountain act a barrier against the movement of winds. Their Himalaya range is a prevent to the cold wind of a Central Asia from entering the India during to winter. Because of this, Kolkata is not as cold as the Canton is a gaseous hole and the winter through the both are situated almost on the same altitude. It is important here. As we move upward from a sea level, we experience a gradually decrease in a temperature. Temperature decrease at the average rate of 6 Celsius per 1000 meter altitude. It is known as a normal lapse rate. The air at a lower evaporation is a warmer than that is a higher elevation of because it is a closest to be a heated surface of earth. As a result, mountains are cooler than to the plain even during to the summer. As a result, mountains are cooler and they are plain even during to summer, and it is a warm is remembering to that is the rate of decreasing of temperature with altitude. The varies with the time of the day and season and the location. Here show the diagram. There is the most important here effect of the altitude on temperature. You know that there is the most important diagram show and the map also show in this effect of the altitude of temperature. The rising altitude of temperature here and they are increasing. The area is also is increasing on this time. Is an important diagram show in this two figure. The Quito and the Guayaquil are two cities of the equator in South America and situated near the equator and relative to close to each other. And Quito is at a 2,800 meters. The high from mean sea level with the Guayaquil is just at a 12 meters altitude. However, because of difference in altitude and Quito experience annual mean to the temperature of 13.3 Celsius, while the Guayaquil is the 25.5 Celsius. Is important here. The next here, ocean currents. They are most important ocean currents here. The ocean currents are two types, is a warm and cold. The ocean current is a two types, warm and cold. The warm current make the coastal along with their flow of warmer, and the well there is a cold current is reduce the temperature of the coastals along with their flow. The northwestern European and coastal do not freezes in the winter due to the effect of the northern altitude and drafty of warm current. While the Quebec is on the coastal of the Canada is freezing due to the cold Labradors is a current flowing along it is through the Quebec and the situated is a lower altitude than the northern west Europe coastal. There is the most important air figure. Here show the map effect of warm and cold ocean current. There is the most important show the arrow, the Gulf Stream and northern altitude of draft and a warm coastal. And the lower is the current is called coastal. There is the most important here of wind effect on the all of the world. There is an important diagram shown in this picture. The next here winds. The wind is also is important here. The wind also affect to temperature because they transport heat from one region to other, about which you have already studied under education. The wind is the most important affect the temperature because transport heat from one region to other. And the next year vegetation cover. The vegetation cover is the most important here. The soil dry to the vegetation cover receive heat more rapidly than the soil under to vegetation cover because vegetation cover absorb much of the sun as a heat and then prevent a quick radiation from the earth, whereas to the farmers radiate it is a more rapidly. Hence the temperature is a variation in the dense forested area are lower than those the desert area. You know that vegetation cover is the most important effect here on the temperature. The vegetation cover is the most important. You know that there is a desert area is a no plant and there is a very low dense. And then the temperature variation in the dense forest is the area the lower than to the heat is a desert area. For example, annual range of temperature in the equator region about 5 Celsius will there hotter desert is high as 38 Celsius. The next here, nature of the soil. There is an important here. The color, texture and structure of the soil is a modified temperature to a great degree. There is a black, yellow and clayey soil absorb to more heat than the sandy soil. It is important here. The color, texture and structure of the soil modifies the temperature to great degrees. The black, yellow and the clay soil absorb to the more heat than to the sandy soil. And like view, the heat is radiated more rapidly from their sandy soil from to the black, yellow and clay soil. And there is temperature contrasts are relatively less in a black soil area than those of the sandy soil. The next here, slope and ascent. There is an important here. The angle of the slope and its direction control the recept of the insolation. The angle of the incidence of sun as a ray is a greater along a gently slope and smaller along a steeper slope. The ray is both the cases is a carry on equal amount of solar energy. The great concentrations of solar energy is a per unit area along to the gently slope areas in the temperature. Well, it is a lesser concentration along the steeper slope and the lower their temperature. For such a reason, the southern slope of the Himalaya are warmer than to the northern one. Yet sometimes the slope in the term of a sap exposed to the sun is received the more insolation and are the warm than those which are the away from the direct ray of the sun. And you know, the northern slope of Himalaya, for example, not the function of sun, are the exposed to be cold. Northerly is the wind are the absorbly is cold. And on the other hand is their southern floor of the Himalaya are sun facings and also is a setter from the northerly cold winds are warmer. This is important and hence we are absorb settlement and cultivation largely on the southern slope of their Himalaya while the northern slope are more under forest area. There is an important point here. Land and the sea contrast leaf attitude, oceans, crane, and wind vegetation cover nature of the soil. Slope and the sap they control their contribution of temperature in the world. The horizontal distribution of temperature over the globes can be studied easily from the map of January and July months. Since there is season extremely of the high and the low temperature, most observe there is both northern and southern hemisphere during this month is important here. And the next year, the first point here, horizontal distribution of temperature in January. That is important here. In January, there is sun sign of vertically as overhead near the topics of the Capricorn. Then it is a summer is the southern hemisphere and winter in the northern hemisphere. The high temperature is found over to the land masses is mainly in three regions of their southern hemisphere, and these regions are the northern west is a Agrarians in the east is a Central Africa and Central Australia. The isothermal of the 30 Celsius is close them. In the northern hemisphere, the land masses are is colder than to the ocean. During this time, northern East Asia experience lowest temperature. As the air is the warm is over ocean than over the landmass. In the northern hemisphere, the isothermal bend to about the pole when they are across the oceans. In the southern hemisphere, the position of the isothermal is just reverse, and there is a bend toward to the pole when there is across the land masses and toward to the equator when there is across oceans. The large expanse of the water exit in the southern hemisphere, hence the isothermals are regular and widely spaced in the southern hemisphere. While there are a regular and closely spaced is the northern hemisphere. Due to large expanses of land masses, from this is a reason not extremely seasonal contrast between the land and water are the found in the middle and higher altitude in the southern hemisphere as the exit north of the equator. Here show the horizontal distribution of the here and there is January May. There is January season. There is the most important here distribution of the temperature here and the horizontal tree in the diagram. There is the most important. The next here horizontal distribution of temperature in a July. There is important here. During this period, the sun shines vertically overhead near to tropic of Cancer. Here the high temperatures are found in the entries northern hemisphere. The isothermal of 30 Celsius pass between 10 is a northern and the 14 Celsius is a northern latitudes. The regions is having this temperature include southwestern USA, the Sahara, the Arabia and Iraq, Iran and the Afghanistan desert region of India and China. However, lowest temperature of 0 Celsius also noticed in the northern hemisphere during summer in the central part of the Greenland. And during summer in the northern hemisphere, isothermals bend to the equator ward and while the crossing the oceans and polar ward while they are crossing land masses. In the southern hemisphere, the position of the isothermal is just opposite. Here show the diagram, the horizontal distribution of temperature on July. The July there is a temperature on the map, there is a change of the sequence. There is a most important. Compared to the Jan and the July, there is a more difference. On this figure, there is important so in this picture. Land usually went to the rather the sharply toward to the pole in the winter and toward the equator in the summer. And this behavior of the isothermal is due to the differential of heating and cooling of the land masses. And the continents are the hotter in the summer and the colder in the winter than the oceans. The difference between the average temperature of the is a warmest and the coldest is a month is a known as the annual range of temperature. Annual range of temperature is larger in the interior part of the continent, in a middle and the high altitude of the northern hemisphere. The barometers and Siberia is code of 66 Celsius temperature is the highest. The 66 Celsius temperature is the very highest annual range of temperature in the world. It is the lowest average winter temperature is minus 50 Celsius. Hence, it is applicable to call to cold pole of the earth. There is a minus 50 Celsius is a very low temperature and 66 Celsius is the highest temperature. The difference between the average temperature of the warmest and the coldest month is known as the annual range of temperature. The important here, the difference between the average temperature of the warmest and the coldest month is known as the annual range of temperature. That is the most important here. The next here, vertical distribution of temperature. That is important here. The permanent snow on the high mountain, even to the tropical, indicates there is a decreasing of temperature with the altitude. Observation reveals that there is a fairly regular decrease in temperature with on increasing in the altitude. The average rate of temperature decrease upward in the troposphere in about 6 Celsius per kilometer, extending the troposphere. This is a vertical gradient of temperature is commonly referred to as the standard atmosphere or normal is a lapse rate, but is a various with the height and season, altitude and hour factor. Indeed, their active is a lapse rate of the temperature does not be away so as a decrease with the altitude is important here. And the next here, the inversion of temperature. There is a important here. Long winter night, the clear sky, dry air and absence of the wind lead to quick radiation of heat from the earth as a surface, as well as from to the lower layer of the atmosphere. This result is the cooling of the air near the earth as a surface. The upper layer, which is a lose their heat not so quickly or comparatively is warm. Another normal condition in which the temperature decrease with increasing the high is a reserves. The cooler air is near the earth and the warm air is there alpha. In other words, the temperature increasing with the increasing and the high temporarily is locally. And this phenomenon is termed to the inversion of temperature. At the same time, the cold and dense air is remain near the surface of the number of day. So there is phenomenon of the inversion of temperature is also seen for the day together. The phenomenon of the inversion of the temperature is especially observed in the intermountains of valley. During the winter, the mountain slope cold is very rapidly due to quick radiation of heat. The air resting above them is also become a cold and dense increasing. Then it is a move down to the slope and settles down in the valley, and this air is a pulses is a comparative is a warm air of the valley upward and the lead to be a phenomenon as a versions of temperature. And sometimes the temperature fall below to the freezing point in the valley, leading to even there is a occurrence of the frost. And frost is there is important. In a contrast, the higher slope remain to the comparative warmer. That is why the mulberries is a planter of Suwa basin of Japan and the apple growers of the Himachal Pradesh. Avoid the lower slope of the mountain to escape winter frost. If you have been to any hill stations, you would be has been to that most of the holiday resort and the houses of the affluent persons and built on the upper slope. There is a most important.